Hello, everyone, and welcome to In My World podcast. Today we have Michael Still on from REGROUP, a big shot in the, as we call him, in the business world. And Michael, just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about why you came on the podcast.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Leighton. I'm not sure. I don't even break 6 foot, so I don't think a big shot's appropriate. Maybe just 6.
Yeah.
So look, Michael Still. First and foremost, a husband and a father. So I've got 3 beautiful girls and a wife that keeps me in check, which I'm sure we'll allude a bit to today's talk. Run a pretty awesome business called REGROUP. Very fortunate to lead that business. We're in mining, we're in civils, we're in renewables. About a 200 plus workforce that we manage every day, and continuing to grow. So we started off with about 22 staff only a couple of years ago, and here we are.
And were you always in business? Were you always kind of a business person? Tell us a bit about your story, getting to where you are now.
I think I always thought I was in business, right? Like, certainly I've always been in business, but always worked for someone rather than having my own thing. It's only the last 4 or 5 years that we've had our own business, but learnt a lot. I guess I feel like I got paid to learn all my mistakes by someone else in my 20s, and certainly been able to use that to propel what we're doing now.
Yeah. So knowing a little bit about Michael's story, he has a bit of a riches to rags story from his 20s, didn't you, mate?
Still feel lost. Still feel like it's rags, right?
So what did your life look like when you were 20 years old, or 17 even?
Yeah, great. So I sort of, I had this bit of a vendetta towards my teachers. Some of them may have said I wasn't going to amount to much, and wanted to prove them wrong. And my goal was to get out of high school and earn as much as my teachers earned in my first year out of high school. So that's why I got into business. Look, I'm very grateful for my education. I'm sure my teachers put up with a lot as a dumb teenager, but I got into business at the age of sort of 17, into sales, and very quickly found myself working at Telstra about the age of 18, and through a strange set of circumstances was put on as operations manager at Telstra for a sales centre in Perth at a young age, and had to learn really quickly how to lead people and lead leaders, and it was quite challenging at the time. But sort of did that. I was fortunate enough to be selected to roll out. We were going through some cultural change as a business, new CEO, new direction, and so led this change within the organisation. Developed a leadership and sales training course that was rolled out to almost 4,000 people across the country and overseas. And had to grow up really quickly because I was only 20 at the time, and here I am trying to teach seasoned professionals how to be a better boss, and how to coach and develop their staff. And I don't know if my voice had broken yet, so it was certainly a fair amount of pressure living out of a suitcase, traveling the country.
So I hear the word leader come up quite a few times in the last few minutes. So I want to ask you, what does being a leader actually mean to you?
For me, leadership is really submitting to your team, right? For me, I'd like to talk of taking a servant heart position towards my team rather than authoritarian position, which I think is pretty typical of the old school management style. And I think that's probably something that I really had to learn in my 20s, and I'm sure Steve will pull it out of me. But unfortunately for me in my 20s, my style was very ego driven. I wanted to prove a point. I was pretty arrogant at the time. I was born in South Africa, so some people say it's attributed to where you're from, but
that makes a lot of sense now.
But I really had to learn that leadership is more around the people you're responsible for leading than it is you as a human. And that doesn't mean that you don't care for yourself. In fact, more so, because you've got to have that headspace to be able to then lead, specifically in times of crisis, right? People look to you in their most vulnerable position to be able to step up and take control.
So you in chatting with you before, your 3 nuggets were knowing who I am, stay the course, and the last one was pressure. I didn't get...
Pressure is a good thing.
Pressure is a good thing. I didn't finish my sentence. So we're going to jump into the knowing who I am one.
Yeah.
Tell us about that nugget for you. What does that mean?
I was alluding to the fact that I was really in my 20s trying to prove who I was, and unfortunately I was probably promoted too quickly, one could argue, and I hadn't, especially being a male in his 20s, company car, PA, state manager of various different businesses, and area manager of a large business, and starting to think that your success is based on who you are, and not recognising that it's because other people around you have put trust in you to lead. I really didn't know who I was. I probably covered up a lot of who I was, I reckon, because I had a point to prove. I had to prove that you didn't have to go to university like my parents had always told me, and didn't need a degree to make it somewhere. And contrary to what some teachers may have said to me, I can actually make it on my own. And so that was the point that I was out there to prove. But not taking the time to actually work out who is Michael Still.
So that started to happen around 25 for you, didn't it?
Yeah, I was snapped into a bit of reality. I was state manager for an American firm at the time, for West Australia, and had started on the side as a bit of a side hustle without disclosing it. And I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but who cares? Okay. I signed a deed many years ago. I'm sure they won't come after me now.
Don't mention any names. It's okay.
Yeah. If you want to give feedback, contact someone else. I don't care. But I started this business on the side, and at the same time in this pretty prominent role, thinking I'd sort of arrived at 25 or 26 or whatever the age was, and one afternoon the sort of country manager rocks up in my office in WA, flew in from Sydney, and I didn't know he was coming, so we all know that's not a good news story. And he said, you've clearly got other priorities outside of this job, it's time for you to move on. And fair enough too, because...
So he found out you had a different business on the side.
Yeah, the word got around pretty quickly. The other business sort of got pretty successful pretty quickly, but also fell away really quickly as well based on different business partners we had at the time.
So it sounds like, you're 18 to 25, big ego, trying to make lots of money, and obviously you've got natural talent in the leadership department. You got to 25... When you say your discovery was knowing who you were, what did that process of actually figuring out who Michael Steele was, what did that look like?
Painful, right? Because I'd never actually taken the time to look inward. I'd always been outwardly focused, right? And so to be forced into a position when you're sort of 25, 26 to go, okay, you now have lost your job. I was engaged at the time, and fortunately, my wife sort of stuck by me, but for a period of time she probably didn't want to. And when you've got to face the cold hard facts of who you are as a human, it's pretty ugly, right? When you've been so outwardly focused, and so for me, I had to walk through that and take ownership for the mistakes that I had made, because I was coming into the season as well, just about to get married, about to inherit 2 beautiful girls as stepdaughters, and I'm so grateful that I didn't walk into that having not gone through the fire first, because I needed to be refined. There's no doubt about that. So, for me, what it looked like is, and I'm so grateful that I was fortunate enough to pick up another job pretty quickly. It might not have been the best job ever, and I probably didn't have the title I was chasing, but it paid the bills. And I sat in a cubicle for a year or just a bit longer, working in a role that I probably didn't really like, but it paid the bills, and it allowed me the time and the space to really connect with some good humans who were able to call out things in me that needed to be called out. And
sounds like you were very humbled, mate.
Yeah, I was.
You fell off your perch and hit the ground pretty hard.
Yeah, it hurt.
I'm sure there's plenty of people out there listening to us who've maybe thought about that journey or have been through that themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So your second one is stay the course. What's that about?
Yeah, look, I think once you know who you are, it's actually easier to stay the course. You know, we've all got goals and we've all got ambitions and things we want to achieve. But the difference probably between you being successful and the next person, in my view, is your ability to just stay in it. Mm-hmm. And so often, when you get smacked from the left or the right, it deviates you off course. And very quickly you can sort of spiral through, these knocks that life presents you. But I really believe if you do stay the course, on reflection, you can actually attest to the fact that you achieve something quite beautiful.
What I noticed with a lot of young people is, they might not even have a course, right? Setting a direction can be a very, very significant thing. A lot of people struggle with that in their 20s. If we look back a step further before we talk about staying a course, how did you actually set your own direction?
Yeah, it was interesting when I was, I don't know if I have set my own direction, right? Like I've known where I wanted to end up, but I probably didn't plan out step by step. I got sick and tired at school of people saying, well, set your goals, write out a plan. I'm like, do people actually do that? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think.
Well, sometimes it can feel like a chore. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, mate, and for some people it's really good. I'm not, I'm very vocal. So, I probably talked a lot around what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, versus writing it down. But I did have this guy who said to me, hey, Mike, don't be too quick to move on from what you're doing right now. And I looked up to him, and I probably didn't appreciate what he was saying in that moment. I would have been 20 or 21 at the time, and he said, don't be too quick to move on from what you're doing right now, because there's a lot of lessons you can learn in the role that you have. And I probably listened to him to a degree. I maybe stuck around for another 12 months or whatever, and then moved on. But I think, I probably bounced around even still a little bit too much in my 20s. And had I done something and given it the time it needed, because everything's hard. Like, it really doesn't matter what you do. There's going to come challenges, and maybe the difference between success and not having success is your ability to see through those challenges. And that's really why, for me, staying the course is so important, because I could probably write 100 reasons why I should step out of the frying pan, even currently, but nothing's ever achieved by bouncing. So, I really believe that one of the best things we can do is get good people around you when you're in the thick of it that can call it for what it is, rather than you looking at your current circumstances without any reality to them. And that's, definitely what we do.
So obviously, in your 20s, you've stayed your course and you've got to where you are now. But obviously it wasn't always sunshines and rainbows. In terms of your own mental health, was there any periods where it got quite dark when you've had all of this responsibility?
Now we're getting deep. This is good. Well, I think one of my biggest fears is failure.
Yeah.
Right. And so, it gets to a point sometimes for me, especially after I had, that time in my mid-20s where I just had to really be humbled based on the situations around me. It forced me to either take a position of humility or walk away from it all, right? And, that was a real dark place because, like I alluded to before, facing the reality of who you are is not fantastic, but it's probably facilitated, the ability now as I sort of age and continue to mature. I think we always mature, but it's allowed me now to, when I do have those dark moments, and they come, right? They come in all sorts of forms, be it family pressure or, in my case, my wife's super supportive, so we don't have any pressure on the home front. But no married man ever. But she is great. But, in the business sense, dealing with all sorts of really tough scenarios. We have a large workforce. They have problems of their own, and that those problems often get escalated to my level. And we're talking about people who've unfortunately tried to take their own life as an example, and I've got to deal with that and be there for that person, but protect my own mental health through that. That can be quite challenging.
So could you say that you've got a lot of young people working for you?
Yeah, we've got a broad range in our business. Certainly, a lot of guys in their 20s, specifically FIFO guys that want to come up and earn the big bucks, and then guys in their 50s and 60s as well. We have a very broad range of people, but I'd say that a lot of our office staff, our up and coming guys are in their 20s. Yeah.
So you have with REGROUP, I know you do a lot of work with some of the prisons in retraining people who may have got off course in their life a bit. Tell me, is that journey that you've had somehow channeling? I mean, why would you invest into these people with your business? Tell me, what's that about? Where's that come from?
I guess it's a hard thing, right? Like, we joked about it earlier, but I'm your typical middle-aged white guy, right? I've lived a pretty good life. I've had a mum and dad that have stayed together. I've been brought from South Africa to Australia. I've gone through high school. I could have gone to private school if I wanted to, and even then I've made plenty of mistakes, right? And I've had my own struggles and battles. So how much more so should we help people that haven't had those privileges? And that's really where the work that we do through our partnership with Maramara in the Roebourne Regional Prison is super important, because here's an opportunity, one would argue a captive market, 10 or 12 guys that we've got just before they're about to be released, where we can really sow into them and give them that opportunity to maybe correct some of their mistakes as well.
Yeah, so walk us through, what does that program look like for the prisoners?
Yeah, so it's a 12-week program, up to 12 guys, and typically guys, for the most part, 100% Indigenous men on the program, and we give them skills like making sure that they get their driver's license, and we provide equipment so that they can then get their tickets on excavators and rollers and water carts and a few other machines, but also their certificate too in civil construction, right. So that they come out fully qualified. But we take it a bit further. The Road to Redemption program, the design in conjunction with the Department of Justice, is really focused, Department of Correction, really focused on getting into reintegrating them into community, right? So reconnecting them with the country that they're from, giving them that opportunity to understand right and wrong, and be forgiven, right? And you talk about my journey. I've been forgiven upteenth amount of times, be it by my wife or my team. We all need forgiveness, and then I think through forgiveness, gratefulness follows, right? Because once you're forgiven for something that you probably shouldn't be forgiven for, if you don't have a posture of gratefulness after that, you're probably not human, right? And
that's right. Yeah, that's good.
And so once I think gratefulness calls for action, because if you're grateful, then you've got to do something with that gratefulness.
I believe that so much,
right?
and I had the exact same thought when we started 20 Talk. I've been given a good childhood. I've been given good resources, and that's a responsibility, right? That's something that you have to use and leverage to help people, because if you just sit in that and I guess just sit in that moment and don't give back, then who are you?
But that came for you though in your journey. You had a bit like Michael. You fell on your ass, so to speak, pretty hard.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So tell us about that for you,
I mean, for me, it's your standard story of a young person, going down the wrong pathway and I guess indulging in the other side of life a little bit too much. And for me, my life was just, at that point, it was just darkness. I couldn't see a future for myself. my whole life was foggy. I couldn't read a page of a book, and I'd lock myself in a room for days on end studying with, study drugs and just hiding from the world. And I couldn't really see a future at all for about 3 or 4 years. And, after I lost those friends, I kind of had a big realization check, and what was important in life became very clear to me. And I spent 6 months rehabilitating my brain from all these drugs. And over that time, the fog started slowly fading away. I could just feel this fog. And then I started to hear the birds chirping out in the windows again. And my whole experience of life became real and tangible, and I could see what life was again. And to me, being able to see what life was again was this ultimate, I was ultimately grateful. And I just felt like I could share this with so many people. I just want to share this. I want to share what this feels like for other people. And I want to make sure a lot of people know this, because where I was yesterday, you don't want to be
So
there.
there's value in going through difficult times. Based on what you've said. Yeah, that's good.
I guess, I think for me, being given a second chance, we talk in our business now about it's our responsibility to give other people second chances. And that doesn't necessarily mean someone who's been incarcerated. It could be anyone. Right? I've not been incarcerated, but I deserve as much a second chance as the person that has been incarcerated. What I've done is probably no different to what they've done. Maybe they got caught for it, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm a criminal, but you know what I mean? We're all we've all had circumstances around us. Now, I don't know how you found it, Leighton, but for me, when you hit that moment, especially in your 20s, and maybe something for your listeners to consider is the people that you're hanging around with and got you to that point aren't the people that are going to get you beyond that point, right? And that's a tough one for people in their 20s to accept, that, your circle of comfort and the people that, allegedly are there for you, they're not the ones that are going to pull you through this mess. They got you there in the first place. So how prepared are you to die to that friend group almost, to propel yourself forward?
Well, there's a lot of shedding, I guess, that had to happen. And, it was actually became quite lonely. Yeah. Because when you enter that new stage, there's a period of loneliness when you're finding out who is your crew, who's in your corner.
Yeah, that's true. So your third point was pressure is a good thing. So I guess it's a part of the whole what you've been talking about.
Again, why do people not stay the course? Because of pressure, right? But I think it's really important that we shift our view on what pressure is and why do we go through pressure. Pressure, is required to refine you, right? And unless you're prepared to get under a bit of pressure, you won't actually be able to call out the real you. And I don't know. I'm not a psych, and I'm sure there's plenty of psychs listening to this that are going to tell me that I'm wrong, right? But, I talk a lot around stretching our capacity for more, or stretching our brain capacity, and even the way the body responds to pressure, right? Yeah. I remember being under pressure. We had a massive issue on a project that we're running in a previous company I was with, and being at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night with the sweats on, right? And just going, how can I can't handle this pressure. And I look back now and go, man, I wish I had that pressure now. That was nothing compared to the pressure I deal with now. And so for me, pressure is really important, because the more pressure I can handle, the quicker I can grow, and the more I can take on. And, we talk around goal. I sort of always knew I wanted to have something of my own in my 30s. Yeah, I probably wished I had it in my 20s, to be fair, but I wasn't ready. But the pressure I feel now for what I now want to have in my 40s is I got to be able to handle a lot more than what I can handle now. And so when I'm in this places of pressure, I don't see it as an opportunity to step back from it and retreat. I see it as an opportunity to grow.
So we're talking about pressure, we're talking about growth. Why are you putting yourself through this? Why are you doing it? Is it the money, or is it you spoke about other things? Let's tell the listeners, I guess.
Look, to be clear, I don't care about money. Everyone in our business knows it. it's a real struggle when they've got to get me to do the second improvement in the bank because I haven't logged in for about 3 months, and I've forgotten my PIN or whatever. It's a big problem in our business. I think if you're going into business to be rich, you're going to fall short. That's not why we went into business. We went into business because I've got a love for people. I've got a love for creating culture. I don't get it right plenty of times, but I guess why am I doing it? Because I don't know what's around the corner, and I don't know what I have to handle tomorrow. And Steve knows my right hand guy in July last year. I was down south, had finally gotten to a point where we had sort of spent 3 years getting the business right and thinking, okay, we can start taking a bit of a break. And my wife and I and the kids are down south, and get a phone call from his son late at night on Wednesday night to say, hey, Dad's died. Pete's no longer here. And he'd left work, driven home 15 minutes after leaving work. He had a heart attack, right? And you can't prepare for that, right? Like you can't prepare for your right hand general to go down so quickly. I mean, I think Steve, you had met him a couple of weeks.
He was an amazing guy.
Weeks before, and his family's out. We know his kids really well. They're connected in our business. His wife's an absolute legend, and I've got to drive back from down south to face our team in Perth, and the next day I've got to fly up to Port Hedland and tell our Pilbara operations team as well, and be there and counsel them, and that's a lot of pressure, right? And if forget the personal mourning that I have to go through at some stage through that process. I've got to be at the same time the guy that leads the team through crisis. And so I probably don't know why I keep putting myself through pressure, but I use that as an example of why I think I need to keep being ready for whatever may come. And I remember after a couple of days of the news of Pete's passing, and my mentor called me up, and he lives just down the road from me, and he said, how you going, mate? And I said, yeah, it's pretty rough. And he goes, yeah, I get that. You want to come around for breakfast? And I thought, breakfast? I've got a whole team here that I've got to be responsible for. And so anyway, I went around for breakfast and sat in his house eating breakfast, and he had cooked up for me. It was really nice. And he said, well, you still got to lead the team, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, it's pretty rough what's happened. I said, yeah, it is. He goes, yeah, okay, cool. So I'll be here for that part, but you got to go out there and be everything else for your team. And it was this real shift for me around, you can be in those moments, but you need people in your corner that are going to come to a point where they hit you with a bit of reality. And that's not to say I didn't mourn, and that's not to say that I didn't find that the hardest thing I've ever been through in my professional career, because that's exactly what it was. But having someone around you can say, yeah, it sucks, but you got to dust yourself up, man. You've got to be ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, perfect. Well,
that's good. Well, thank you, Michael, for sharing your unique leadership journey and having to push on, and I really respect that, and what you're doing in the community with the basketball programs in the Kimberley and all those different things. It sounds like a worthwhile thing. So
100%. No, you should be proud of yourself for that.
No,
it's
thanks,
incredible.
Guys. And look, really grateful to be on this talk. I think this is super important, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's keep it going.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.